Actman is about to tell us the truth of the video game industry. And sadly, he might be right. We'll see.
Wow, this new Star Wars Outlaws game looks pretty great.
That's pretty good.
You know what? Let's check out the official website and see if we can learn more about the... Good Lord, what is happening in there? Pre-order. Get 3 days early access. Pre-order. You want to pre-order the Season's Pass? And get 3 days early access. Pre-order. That's four pre-orders on one screen. Extend K's journey with 2 upcoming DLCs. You want to play the exclusive Jabba's Fuckhouse? Pre-order.
Fuck.
Unlock exclusive cosmetic pre.
In the comments, tell me if you guys are guaranteeing that this game is going to die immediately when it comes out. Like, I know it'll get sales because it is a Star Wars game, and I know Star Wars fans will play it, you know, just to see. But based on Ubisoft's track record in these last years, I would not be surprised if this game falls way below. Because if you look at what they're trying to do with everything, it's god-awful what they're trying to do. I don't understand why they're doing this. Well, actually, no, I do understand. They're trying to make money. Let's be real.
Are you fucking pre-ordering yet? You know what's funny?
No.
If you go to the
No
Arrowhead
plans to.
Games website and just look at it, there's something special about an Arrowhead game. Games should challenge the creativity of the individuals who play them. We want our games to help forge friendships. And look
Wow.
at that. Not even an advertisement for the Super Citizen Edition. I think this is a great way to illustrate what
They just
AAA
know,
gaming
man.
has become and what indie gaming has evolved into. The difference in priorities is clear, and you might assume, Actman, that's just typical Ubisoft greed and shenanigans. But you're wrong. It's worse than that. What Ubisoft is doing with Star Wars Outlaws is symptomatic of a much greater issue plaguing all of AAA gaming. Recently, Ubisoft dropped a story trailer for Outlaws. I watched it, and I felt apathy. As you know,
no.
Apathy is
Yep.
death.
the gameplay reveal for Outlaws looked solid, but now I'm skeptical. Maybe it was the boring writing, the generic presentation, or the fact that they're directing people towards the $120 version of the game instead of the
Tell me in the comments if you guys are going to pay $18 a month just so you don't have to pay full price for this game. And not to mention, you won't be owning it because Ubisoft says you don't have to own games anymore. That's a part of the past. So if you're paying $18 a month for a subscription, well, let's be real. You'll play it for $18 and then cancel the subscription, played it for a month. It's probably going to just not even be that long. And that's it. Like, that is the best way to not spend $70 or $110 or even $130 for this game that is probably going to be way below average. And if Ubisoft says this is another quadruple A game, you know they're gonna done F it up really badly. I'm already looking at the big picture here.
the standard version.
Hello, I like money.
Still, I
that
don't
meme's been
remember the
used so many
last time
times.
I felt indifferent to a new Star Wars game. On the flip side, one of my buddies sent me a trailer for a game called Kingmakers. I've never heard of this franchise nor the studio behind it, but let's check it out. What the
What?
fuck is this? Oh my god! This is a fucking
this?
Chevy truck in the... Oh, we're using shotguns?
Oh, man, it's playing
How can
Back to the
engine
Future.
handle this many guys on screen? This is
M-rated.
like Mountain Blade plus Dynasty Warriors with time travel? And grenades? Oh my god, and they have RTS mechanics? No shot. It can't get any crazier.
Oh
And
my
helicopters too? Here's the question of the day. Why, as a huge Star Wars fan, am I more excited for this and not this? Well, the answer is obvious. It's Ubisoft. But like I said, AAA gaming has been in decline for some time.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, indie games have become a spawning pool for creativity and imagination.
Indie games are becoming the next release of basically like the new big releases now. When we look at AAA games today, we have to be very, very skeptical of them. And it sucks because there's been a lot of great AAA games in the past, but those are slowly going away, and those will probably cease to exist because now companies are moving forward with live services. just figuring out what's the best money way. Mobile is just exceeding expectations on a global scale. And now we have, indie devs like Arrowhead who made a really successful game, Helldivers. I've been playing it with buddies. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it. And that should show you. And I just don't understand why now it's all about, you know, the regular indie devs now, which it should be because indie devs they're bringing it. They're bringing
You
it.
may have seen the plethora of AAA gaming is dead
Oh,
videos
God.
spring up on YouTube.
I've seen so many of those.
Well, AAA gaming didn't just die.
It was
It
murdered.
was murdered.
Yeah. I've seen those thumbnails.
If you got that reference, welcome back to 2017 YouTube. Clearly,
Yep.
I'm not the only
Yep.
one who has felt disillusioned and apathetic towards recent AAA titles. But a lot of people focus on how AAA games have gotten worse. They highlight the obvious: excessive monetization, unfinished products being released. I can't masturbate to this character. And while these are all issues worth pointing out, we need
Please don't tell me you guys were a part of that whole controversy thing when they changed her face. That was the stupidest thing ever. And I don't know, many people complain about anything nowadays.
to understand why these things are happening. The bigger picture. You see, the reality is AAA games have become far too safe, formulaic, predictable, and just unexciting. Perhaps it's because you're an old jaded nerd, Actman. No, that couldn't possibly be it.
Am I so out of touch? No.
It's
the children
kids.
who are wrong.
It's the
That's
children.
what we're going to explore today. The decline of AAA gaming and the rise of indie. Why has AAA gaming gotten so bad? Now, first off, what the fuck does AAA actually mean? The Advanced
Just AAA.
Aardvark Association? Because I'd love to join that club. No, instead you should join my public Discord server, the Act Clan. Links in the
Already
pinned
in it.
comment and in the little card up
Already
here.
in it.
But the acronym originally referred to large budget, high profile games developed by reputable studios released by major publishers. You know, Halo, Call of Duty, Warcraft, The Witcher, 50 Cent Bulletproof,
Oh,
Cory in the
God.
House. Games that would shake the very foundation of the world. AAA games typically have large teams, expensive marketing campaigns, and copious amounts of funding.
I saw this. 8 years of development and $540 million to make Red Dead Redemption 2. And I mean, that's just crazy in itself because now budgets of games like Suicide Squad and like not Helldivers, freaking Skull and Bones probably are probably a lot more than this. Maybe about 1 to 200 million more. Maybe less, but it's just sad to me that companies are spending that much money on flops, on things that we know were going to be garbage right out the gate, like Suicide Squad and Skull and Bones, and potentially even Star Wars Outlaws. And Rockstar got really lucky because they actually made a quality game that still holds up to this day. And the fact that we don't get any of that anymore for AAA games it's sad, man. It's really sad.
The term was taken from the credit industry and applied to gaming once the severely obese corporate fat cats realized video games weren't a joke of a business and could actually make more money than Hollywood. For business moguls, AAA meant this is the safest investment you can make to get a return. That's not the case anymore. Today, AAA mostly indicates the aspirations and cost of a game, not how safe an investment it is. From the 80s to the 2000s, there weren't many games that were commercial failures. It was mostly like failed consoles. And that's
Yeah.
a good video to watch. But since the
Watched that video
2010s,
so
as
many
AAA
times.
gaming budgets have grown exponentially, we've seen some big-ass flops. Marvel's Avengers, Suicide
Oh,
Squad,
God.
Anthem, Redfall, Aliens, Colonial Marines. And in the last 7 or so years,
Oh my
it
God.
also seems like many popular franchises have released what fans consider to be the worst entry in said franchise. Fallout 76, Battlefield 2042, Mass Effect Andromeda. Maybe this is all just a coincidence.
It's so funny because I look at it like this, where back in the early days when I played PS2 games and stuff like that, it didn't feel corporate. It felt like they were making a game finished because you couldn't do patches back then, and literally could just make a game as best as possible, and you know that game had to work because if it didn't work, you'd be effed. And you release some sort of quality. And now it's all about, well, we'll release it, but know that we'll have 12 patches to make sure the game is where it was supposed to be when it came out 10 years ago. And that's just not right. Like, why do we still get that nowadays? And I don't get why we still get that. It's kind of like, you think they would learn after all these mistakes that have happened across the game industry, across from all publishers. But I think gaming started to die when corporate started getting even more corporate than ever. That they started to see that it was a major, major business than just selling a game at quality. It was about how much money can you fuel to make sure it grows the company going forward. And unfortunately, the more corporate it gets, the worse that AAA gaming gets. And it's already getting there.
But as one trained in the Force, you know that true coincidences are rare.
So what gives? Why have things changed? Well, one of the driving factors behind the decline of AAA games is they've gotten too big. The pants do not fit anymore. For reference, vanilla World of Warcraft was made by a team of about 40 people. Helldivers 2 was made by a team of 100. Over 9,000 people contributed to Diablo 4.
That's a lie. That 9,000 people worked on this game, and it's become the most hated Diablo game as far as from what I can tell. Of course, there's fanboys, but yeah. Red Dead Redemption 2 was made with like, what, 1,000, 2,000 people, and was the biggest success of AAA gaming. And now they need numbers double that to make a live service $60 horse dumpster fire.
What, 9,000?
Starfield,
Oh,
7 years in development, $200
not
million
Todd Howard.
budget,
Please, no.
1,700 planets to explore. Todd, you think maybe we could tone that number of planets down to like 30 or maybe 10? 10 really good planets? The gamers desire 1,700 planets. AAA games have exploded in size, scope, and cost to an unprecedented level. On one hand, a larger team has the potential to create something truly incredible, revolutionary, to realize their greatest ambitions. But this relies on having a cohesive vision amongst many people and the budget and resources to make it happen. However, the more ambitious a project, the more money invested into it, the riskier it becomes. Immortals of Avium, a game you probably never heard of, was the debut title for Ascendant Studios. And for some inexplicable reason, the game was given a budget of 125 million smackaroos, making it one of the most expensive video games ever made. What the fuck? Immortals sold poorly, and Ascendant, after releasing their first title, had to lay off almost half of their staff. 6 months later, the remaining employees were furloughed.
It's like, this is what I'm talking about. They get to, like, it's a brand new IP, so this is that's a big risk. And one, it's a new IP, it's not an existing franchise, and then you spend that much money to hope this is going to become something. Of course, now we're in this era where gamers are expecting a lot more with newer hardware and newer systems. But it's just like, Jesus, that's a lot of money to hope you're going to get that back. And yes, Red Dead Redemption's cost that we just saw was 500 million. This game was 125. So you think, well, that's a lot less budget than what Red Dead spent on. But again, that's still big. Like, in the millions. We're not talking thousands. We're talking millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And then that just goes straight down the toilet. I didn't even, like, I think the thing I heard about this game was probably, like, a PlayStation event or something. But that was the last I heard of it. And I never heard of it again. And that probably explains why, because the game just...
A fancy word
the toilet.
Maybe you have a job, IDK, and the company's future is uncertain. Sometimes memes can spit truth. I want shorter games with worse graphics made by people who are paid more to work less, and I'm not kidding. Immortals of Avium is a mistake that shouldn't have happened, and it's the exact type of reason why AAA publishers are sticking with familiar IPs and playing it safe.
Exactly.
You guys excited for Call of Duty 26 to come out later this year? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. But why was Immortals, this random game, bloated with such a ridiculous budget and high expectations? Well, COVID-19 changed a lot of things. People bought a shitload of video games during that time, and some upper management folk adjusted their business. They saw this as an opportunity to invest. So they expanded operations, hired more employees, but of course, the video game sales caused by the pandemic didn't last. And we're now seeing the fallout of that overexpansion.
I think what a lot of companies were thinking was that they thought after, like, during the pandemic, yes, people during the pandemic were buying games because, you know, it was the pandemic, so they were stuck at home. But the other thing is, too, is that they were just expecting that anybody that sees a game just to buy the game. And they didn't care of the quality, they didn't care what it was, and they would just buy it because they were stuck at home. People would buy GTA, people would buy Call of Duty, people would buy, you know, other games in that realm to, you know, be entertained while COVID was happening. But now that we're not in that era anymore, you know, we're kind of out of that COVID bubble, and now people are doing other things. Not many people are playing as much games as they were in the past. So, but these companies still have that mindset. It's like, well, people will still play games because video games have become the commonplace now. And I do agree that they are commonplace, but not to the same degree that they were in 2020. 2020 was a different thing for gaming, man. Everybody was playing video games. But now it's kind of shortened down after these, you know, what, 4 years or so.
Fallout New Vegas. 10,000 layoffs in 2023 and 8,000 more on the way. Over 30 studios.
Layoffs even happen when a company does well. EA, Activision, Take-Two. Even though these companies do well, they still lay off people. It's disgusting.
Were shut down. Several games canceled.
Yeah.
The hubris from corporate overlords has uprooted this industry in such terrible ways. Overloading teams with talented employees and a zillion dollars isn't some magical recipe for success. In fact, it puts the studio in a much more dire, stressful position, because if the game doesn't sell well, they're fucked.
Yeah.
Blockbuster game development costs are out of control. According to a study by the CMA, a single AAA game could
That's why I'm kind of worried for GTA 6, because if the game ends up being nothing like what fans wanted, or it's just not good at all, and it ends up flopping, we could see Rockstar shut down. Like, not even kidding you, because this game is supposed to be super duper expensive, in the billions of dollars of budget. And if they're expecting to, like, I know it'll sell because people want to play it, but if it doesn't succeed to what people wanted it to be, or if it's just filled with microtransactions right out of the gate, and Take-Two is trying to do some shady shit, then I would not be surprised if Rockstar just fades away. Like, that would break my heart in so many levels. And I just really hope that's not the case, because they've been saying how much budget they've been spending on GTA 6 and how it's supposed to be this big game of a decade or so. And I hope it is that. I hope it honors this word, but I don't know, man.
Have development costs between $90 to $180 million dollars, plus $50 to $150 million for marketing. That Suicide Squad game that 200 people are playing?
There's more people playing Avengers than Suicide Squad, only by like 20. And that's just sad.
Probably had an inflated budget. This is clearly unsustainable. It's like every major AAA game is some massive live or die gamble. Naturally, companies want to mitigate and avoid all the risk they can. So, again, they rely on established IPs and stick with what's familiar, and most of all, safe. So wait a minute, Actman. You're telling me AAA games have become a greater risk, but also safer?
That's a paradox, John.
Think about it this way. The bigger the budget, the more employees working on a game, the more copies it needs to sell. Therefore, It has to appeal to a lower common denominator. They have to simplify and dumb down something. They cannot take risks or experiment. They have to stick with what has proven.
It's so funny how COD or Call of Duty World at War was the most brutal World War II shooter I've ever played. And I consider that like one of the best in terms of, you know, showing the brutalness of World War II because it was a brutal war. And then you have like what 9 or 10 years later, COD World War II, and then it immediately dumbs all that down and plays it safe and literally just did the complete opposite of what World War II did, or World at War, I mean. And that should show you how things are getting safe. And even with this Modern Warfare, like the Modern Warfare series is getting terrible now. It's now becoming a milked series that Activision immediately milked when they saw the success of Modern Warfare 2. Or just the Modern Warfare games that were selling way more than any other Call of Duty game in the recent years. And now it's become safe to play. Now they gotta allow AI to write a shitty script like in Modern Warfare 3's campaign. I don't know if it was written by AI, but a lot of people make jokes like that. And to be honest, I can understand it because it feels like that. It's one of the worst campaigns in human history.
To work. This is a huge reason why indie games such as Helldivers 2, Hades, Lethal Company are so much better at innovating
A lot of
on
my
a
friends are
popular
playing those
formula
too.
or giving us something brand new. Which would you rather play, Back 4 Blood or Deep Rock Galactic? I better see some fucking rock and stone in the comments. But that's the thing. Back 4 Blood is a cheap imitation of what inspired it, while Deep Rock Galactic is a unique twist on the whole four dumbasses trying to accomplish something co-op game. Deep Rock is brimming with
Sounds like
charm,
me.
style, and this is gonna sound cheesy as fuck, but you can feel the love that went into it. I can't say the same with Back 4 Blood. What are some other examples that illustrate how games have gotten safe? Well, let me ask you this. Did you think for 1 millisecond that the Modern Warfare 3 remake was going to do the no Russian scene justice? Did you think it was going to be as shocking, if not more so?
No!
You terrorist.
Oh no.
You look like one.
God.
Woo! Oh, give the writers a raise. Of course not. Like, even Call of Duty feels
There was writers on this game? Shocking. No, I did not expect it. I think the COD community knew right out of the gate that this game was a rushed piece of garbage that literally, like, immediate sequel from Modern Warfare 2, even though it was going to be an expansion or a year 2 of somewhat, and literally shat the bed completely. And people are having the audacity to put this game in A tier or some sort of in their tier list and put like Black Ops 3 below or other games below, which is just saddens me to no end that now we don't have taste for Call of Duty anymore like what we used to have. Like I grew up like World at War COD 4 days and then made my way, played every single Call of Duty game since. Like, the fact that we don't have those kind of games anymore, and now they're just saying this is the best because the movement is back. I mean, if you watched Ackman's video, he pretty much said that in multiplayer.
feels like it's been sterilized. But of course, there's some exceptions with like Cold War. I mean, that game took some serious risks with its campaign and story, and it paid off. Gamers love being surprised. We love being thrown for a loop.
Surprise
because
is
it's
important.
so hard to do now in the age of the internet and with all these leaks and everything. This is why Helldivers 2's live service is retaining so many players, because there haven't been any roadmaps going into excruciating detail about what to expect. It's why the redemption of No
Literally
Man's Sky hit so
everything is a roadmap now. Cyberpunk, a roadmap to fix the game. Call of Duty, a roadmap to see what content you're getting and not getting until a couple months later.
hard because Sean
Like-
and Hello Games just went into hibernation and came out when they had something to show people. When I say safe, I'm not just talking about the lack of innovation with game design, but also the writing. AAA franchises that used to go really hard with the dialogue now feel tame, like they're pulling punches. I'm not a huge expert on Fallout, so Fallout fans, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But there is a massive difference between Bethesda's Fallout games and the other Fallout games. In New Vegas, you can literally sell drugs to children. Like that's a real choice you have in the game. You can be an absolute maniac You can shake down a guy for caps and he'll say, well, you've taken everything but the clothes off my back. And then you can say, actually, give me your fucking clothes too. You know what I mean? Like, for some reason, I just can't picture these types of things being in a new Fallout game. KOTOR 2 is also a fantastic example because I doubt we'll ever see a Star Wars game that takes the franchise in such a bold direction. KOTOR 2 is a Star Wars game where the main villain wants to kill the Force, destroy the Force, like remove it from the universe, destroy the concept of Sith and Jedi.
Ain't that
completely.
a plot we don't get
There's
nowadays?
no way in Nar Shaddaa we'd ever witness a Star Wars game that delves into that sort of thing. According to Obsidian, Chris Avallone, one of the main writers for New Vegas and KOTOR 2, Obsidian made multiple proposals to develop spin-offs for Fallout and the Elder Scrolls, all of which were turned down by Bethesda. And while we can only imagine the reason why, perhaps it was too risky in their eyes. Here's another example, Halo Wars 2, console RTS.
It's too risky, yet they release Fallout 76. Okay. Just pointing that out there.
It's pretty niche, but its expansion, Awakening the Nightmare, was the first time in a decade we saw the Flood in a Halo game. Why haven't the Flood appeared in the main series? Don't want to risk lowering the sales with an M rating, right? M-rated games don't sell too great, do they? Speaking of Rockstar, God, this industry pisses me off sometimes. LA Noire 2, where is it? Bully 2? And you might think, well, isn't that hypocritical, Ackman? You were just complaining about these companies sticking to established IPs. But both of these franchises only have one game. And that's kind of my point. Instead of making one, $400 million game, why not cut a chunk of that out and develop multiple AA games?
What if they took one of these $150 million AAA budgets and made a couple of $20 million bets with them, right? And just funded a bunch of projects, and the risk is much smaller. And I think that would be very good for the industry. And I wish AAA would take more risks like that with smaller teams. Then you would get that cohesion. You would get that sort of singular vision, I think, and stronger creativity out of it.
I at least understand this for Rockstar because their games are so overhyped. If they released a sequel that you thought was a 9 out of 10, that would feel disappointing. A bunch of Halo spin-offs were also pitched to leadership at 343, including an ODST-themed game similar to Helldivers 2. Imagine what could have been. I guess I just don't understand why the corporate side of game development treats every title like it has to be an all-in bet. Do you see what I'm getting at? So many of our favorite franchises that we grew to love because of how bold they were are now playing it safe. And that's why indie and AA gaming is thriving right now, because they can take risks. They're not obsessing over how many people are gonna buy the game. The developers of Palworld were like, well, hope this doesn't make us go bankrupt. Indie studios are operating at the level that AAA used to. And when you don't have to make hundreds of millions of dollars to keep your company afloat and not fire your entire studio.
I was just thinking about this when he was talking about Rockstar, is that Rockstar is playing it safe with GTA 5 and GTA Online when they literally cancel all of the single-player DLC that they were going to drop for GTA 5. They were literally going to have a Trevor 007 type mission that was confirmed to be filmed and never got released because they were making buku money on GTA Online. Like, that just blows my mind that you couldn't do both at the same time. You couldn't release another GTA Online update that makes money and then release a single player pack that may also make money. So, like, you would have made money both ways. And the fact that they never did that because they wanted to play it safe by just releasing, more meh updates later down the line, he's right. I mean, everybody's gotten safe. Now we're just getting rehashed maps in Call of Duty nowadays, and now we're just hoping to get some sort of updates for other games. And that kind of sucks now, that our favorite franchises are now turning into the safe motto.
You can take risks. And going back to my initial comparison between Arrowhead and Ubisoft, there's a huge difference in the mission statements of AAA and indie games. Baldur's Gate 3 is an indie game. Larian is an independent studio, but the quality is so amazing, you'd assume it's AAA, right? There's this trend of indie developers reassuring customers that they're not gonna nickel and dime us. No, there are no in-game purchases in our game. We believe in providing a complete and immersive gaming experience without the need for additional purchases. Vermintide 2 is one of the only games to do loot boxes right, because they didn't sell them. At the height of the loot box craze, no less. Helldivers 2 doesn't let you pay for tiers in the Freedom Passes. Indie developers can afford to be more player-friendly because they don't have these investors hanging over their heads and these massive budgets. You might think all these egregious microtransactions is just...
And the microtransactions are literally making companies billions and billions of dollars. You can ask that to mobile. Like, mobile is generating billions of dollars because people are just spending money. Like, they pick up their phone, spending money like this on Candy Crush and everything else. And, I mean, that's normal for them now, which is sad. But that's how it is. It's normal for them to have a single-player game or both a single player and a multiplayer game, and you have to expect it to have microtransactions for AAA, and that's a shame. And you know, we can never get a game without microtransactions because even some companies admit that we can't live off just game sales, and that just shows you how bloated budgets are.
Pure corporate greed, and there's a good chance some of it is,
even when we have price increases for games.
It's also a safeguard, like a necessity. And I think the solution is just to make games smaller, dude. Now, a really shitty byproduct of this risk-averse mentality is that a lot of these publishers are looking for a quick buck. They want to make easy money.
Exactly.
So what do? Bingo! Flood the market with shitty remasters. Boy, there's been an abundance of these lately. The Last of Us 1 on PC, GTA Trilogy.
I knew that was gonna happen.
Shit. Here we go again.
I knew he was gonna say that. Oh, dear
Hell,
me.
even Dark Souls Remastered sucked major ass. And don't even get me started on the fucking Battlefront collection.
Oh, no.
Did you know that at one point Warcraft 3 Reforged had like 3 people working on it?
I have a friend of mine who plays this. I'm not gonna say his name, but he's still holding on to it. He's like, it's a lot better now. You don't have to pay for a game, or you shouldn't pay for a game that you know literally did nothing to deserve that.
Like, one guy was supposed to remake all of the cutscenes, and this is so perplexing. These studios dump 10 figures into a new game, but can't even hire 10 people to make a decent remaster. It's like there's no middle ground. It's either no budget or dump the bank account. Meanwhile, Lethal Company, made by one guy. Now, because studios are investing so much, they tend to interfere with the creative process to insane degrees. They see trends that are making money elsewhere, and they think, well, let's just throw that into our game. I'm funding this. What I say goes. Redfall lost 70% of its Arcane staff during development, struggled the whole way. Development of Redfall began in 2018 as parent ZeniMax was quietly looking to sell itself and was encouraging its studios to create games as a service projects like Overwatch. Microtransactions were intensely encouraged.
And this is
However, the
before
problems in
Microsoft
trying to
bought them.
develop Redfall surfaced early. Firstly, management kept offering conflicting visions of what the game would and should be, resulting in developer confusion about what they were creating. How to reconcile single-player and multiplayer within an Arcane game was never really resolved either. Secondly, Arcane employed fewer than 100 people, which had been enough to make a single-player game, but was not a healthy number for developing a large multiplayer game with microtransactions to manage. Outsourcing work to other studios was reportedly not enough to alleviate the strain. As a result of plummeting morale and lack of direction, veteran employees left the company in droves, with about 70% of the staff ultimately leaving Arcane. Redfall is not the only story of its kind. You can look at most AAA flops or AAA games that severely disappointed, and you'll find something similar. Management interfered. Management wanted this. I imagine they feel they have to micromanage these things, again because of the investment. Sometimes with AAA games, it feels like there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and Gordon Ramsay is pissed.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
There's got to be a happy middle ground in dev team size. Too small and you feel like the world rests on your shoulders. Too big and you feel like you have zero agency and influence. These big dev teams, especially when they're spread out against multiple studios across the country, can sometimes have very inefficient communication, bureaucracy. Next Battlefield has the largest development team so far. 1 year later, former DICE dev says 2042 never stood much chance being great at launch. There's a video by Timothy Kane, the creator of the original Fallout, about game development caution. And he talks about how certain things in game development now that could be fixed in 45 minutes now take 4 weeks.
When we were making the Outer Worlds, the combat AI wasn't really in yet, so I asked for a very simple combat aggression code to be added. This is how simple it was. Every time an NPC got shot, they would see if that person was on the list of someone who'd shot them. If they weren't, they'd add them to the list with the amount of damage they just took. If they were already on the list, they'd just add the amount of damage they took. Whenever they're deciding who to attack, they attack the person at the top of the list. That's it. That's all I wanted. The programmer who it got signed to came to me and said, I need 4 weeks. And I'm like, why? Walk me through what you're going to do. And he goes, you don't understand. And I was like, I've coded this 3 times. Walk me through it. And he wouldn't. He left. He left angry. Lead programmer came back, started yelling at me, saying, if he says he needs 4 weeks, he needs 4 weeks. And I'm like, then I will do it. I'll have it done before lunch. And he said, no, because then people will have to support your code. I'm like, I'm going to walk you through what I want. And you tell me why this takes 4 weeks. He looked at what I wrote, which was about 10 lines of pseudocode on a whiteboard. And he goes, I'll come back. He came back about an hour later and said, what about 2 weeks? And I said, do I have any options here? Fine. 2 weeks.
You want to fix these lines of code? That decision has to go through 10 fucking departments now. It needs to be approved by your manager, by your manager's manager.
It's funny how, like, that guy who was developing the Outer Worlds, who was really leading the project for Obsidian, had to talk to so many other people just to say, hey, I'm working on a game I'm passionate about, leading, not a studio lead, but like a person who's, you know, really looking over this, and now saying, well, you can't do that because I can't do it. It's like, but I could do it in the less of a second, and you're telling me you need about 5 weeks to do this. And he was passionate about delivering a product. So the fact that you have to go through these lines of management, of corporate and things just to a fucking patch. Think about that. An effing patch has to go through all this stuff to fix something in a game. And you look at how games are broken now, and you just have to imagine all those developers and studio leads going through this mosh pit library of, hey, how do we fix not falling through the world? How do we fix invisible weapons? How do we fix NPCs not walking through walls? Well, let me talk to the millions of people that are responsible. It's like that blew my mind. That blew my mind in so many levels.
It has to go through the marketing team, the DEI office. The fucking janitor's cousin has to approve it. Indie developers don't have the same level of bureaucracy. I imagine if there's a problem with the code, you could just walk over to the cubicle of Jimbo and ask him about it without the fucking HR department breathing down your neck. And you also have to make games that can be released in China. You need that China money. It has to hit certain quotas and scores on diversity, equity, and inclusion to secure funding. And the game needs to have microtransactions for this consistent revenue source, a live service business model, so that makes the investors happy. And can you see how creativity dies in this environment when games are made by committee and not creativity? It also seems like the more employees a company has, the easier it is for you to blend in and not be seen or heard. Indie studios
That's why a lot of studio developers either leave or they form unions, because they're just not there. Like, they just don't feel like they're protected. They don't feel like they're heard. They don't feel like, hey, I have something I need to fix, and I know we have a deadline, but I want this to be done. But again, it goes back to that whole library thing of just like, well, you got to go through all these people to get one thing approved for the game. And that's just like, why does it have to be like this? If it's going to make the game better, let the person do the work. If they were offering to do the work, then just let them do it. They're part of the place too. They're an employee for the publisher as well. So like, what's the difference?
typically have better working conditions with flexible hours. employees have more creative control, smaller teams allow the individual to have more influence on a game and a greater impact. I've seen a lot of articles from ex-developers who say, this game wasn't what we intended to make. It wasn't what we envisioned. Disagreements are going to spring up in game development, but it's easier to settle an argument between 2 people than it is 100. At the end of the day, indie gaming has risen where AAA has fallen. The decline of AAA gaming is due to the insane budgets, scope, and expectations of these games. How that affects the employees, the
I think
work environment.
what we'll see is that the AA and the indie games will become the new AAA games of the next couple of years. AAA games are going to slowly die and pretty much be killed, and with a few gems here and there for AAA, but very few. Like, that's a very few percent. While AA and indie games continue to skyrocket because those developers are looking at the AAA games and they're seeing the diminished quality, the diminished lack of creativity, and they are starting to see, this is our moment. This is what we're going to release because we put this passion. Me and my friend played a zombies map on Black Ops 3, custom map, that was literally developed by 3 people, even had a trailer on YouTube, and it almost felt like a brand new game. It was made by 3 people as opposed to 1,000 people developing a AAA game, and it had more quality than a AAA game, which is insanity to me. But that just shows you how technology is going and how these developers are getting smarter now. Now, it's not to say that AAA developers are dumb, but they have their, like, you know, they're being watched in a way where they have to just make something to hopefully please somebody. And that just sucks, man. And that creates lots of stress, anxiety, and that causes a lot of people to have turnover. It's just probably why gaming industries become turnover and layoff central. Like, you always hear about that.
The investors and higher-ups who have to constantly micromanage these games and throw in their own ideas when they have no fucking clue what makes a good video game. I feel like a lot of these developers simply don't have the same luxuries and freedom to create art like they used to. Game development in the AAA space is now a committee process where simple solutions to bugs can take weeks, where the freedom to express and create art and take risks is suppressed in favor of creating the generic and the safe. Too many external factors have disrupted what used to be a creative process with the singular goal of making the best and most fun video game possible. It ain't about that no more. This shit has to make money, and a lot of it. And it's for all these reasons that AAA gaming is declining, and why indie titles are thriving. But what do you think? What are some of your favorite indie games? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments.
Helldivers for sure. Definitely still playing that. Helldivers is great. There's just so many great indie games out there that I think, like, most people need to start playing those. And I'm sure they are, because there's a lot of people playing indie games on Twitch. There's a lot of people playing indie games on YouTube. And I just don't see AAA gaming getting any better in the next couple of years. Well, again, we'll have those gems, but we will not have every game being high quality anymore. Most games we're going to have are either unfinished, filled with microtransactions, season passes, 3-day early access, overpriced editions, and then you don't deliver. That's what's happening. But that's what I have to say. And honestly, guys, go and give Actman a watch. Why are AAA games getting worse? I'll leave the video link in the description below. And peace out, y'all.